All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another Thursday. It is Thursday today, right, Ryan?
I hope so.
So, welcome to yet another Thursday. Today, I'm here with Ryan Ricciardi from SAAS Alerts. And as we get ready for our upcoming CISA event, I was talking to Ryan. We were at an event together, and he is a rock star. He's going to tell you about himself in a second, but he is a rock star, and he understands what's happening in the cybersecurity space better than most people. And I was so excited that he said yes to come to this and have a conversation with us about what's happening in the space, what you need to look out for, why you need to come to the CISA event so that you can learn a lot of the tools and assets, and what are the tools that are available out there, tools like SaaS Alerts that can help you. But I wanted, so first, just tell them about you and how you got started in this whole mess, and then we're going to jump into your presentation, and then I think we're just going to go from there. I'm like, I've seen your presentation before, so I'm really excited for it today, and so I'm looking forward to for them to see your presentation as well.
Usually I prefer that people under promise so that I can over deliver, but uh, so my name is Ryan Ricciardi. I do work for a company called SaaS Alerts. I'm the chief revenue officer there. So basically, anyone who's getting to know the product or thinking about spending money with us or thinking about trying to make money with it works with my teams. Before that, I've had a couple of roles that pretty much my entire adult life have been around security, cybersecurity, infrastructure, and information security. I started in the Marine Corps. I was actually in the Air Wing, and I had what's called a B billet. If you're not familiar with it, it means I got paid. Didn't get paid more, but I had two jobs, and that was network administration. Different kind of threat vector because it was a closed system, and really the only things that could damage it would physically damage it, but we still had to plan for that redundancy. After that, I opened up an MSP in the Carolinas that's still going strong. My partner at the time is still running it. And then I got sniped by the Federal Aviation Administration. So I worked there in safety operational standards for about 6 years. Effectively, just again redundancy for air traffic control systems, ensuring they would work, and if something went down, failover was immediate and everything was considered. And then I got into the actual spot that we're at now, the private sector cybersecurity bit, working for business continuity disaster recovery companies, and ultimately made the transition over to SaaS Alerts because I believed in the vision. My CTO here, Chip, is a bit prophetic. He actually anticipated this transition to the cloud quite a while ago and identified that there was a good chance we weren't prepared for it to be abused. Now,
Yeah.
you've probably everybody else who's talking about it says the same thing. COVID accelerated the timeline. The workflow, the workers now are so distributed, and that we don't have the security and the compliance bits that we had with that internal infrastructure. And it's been abused. It's just the way the world is.
It is the way the world is, and I'm not going to hold the Marine thing against you because I'm an Army guy, but
And
but
there's
thank
there's
you, thank
nothing
you
you
for
can
your
say.
service.
You as well, brother.
And I really, I remember when I ran my MSP. I got out in 2015, but I was looking at everything going to SaaS, and I'm like, man, this is gonna add a whole different layer of protection is required here that people are not thinking about yet. And so take us through it. Take us through. Why don't if you're ready to go, let's
I am.
take us through it and talk to us about it, so that, because a lot of people are still stuck in that old mindset, and they think that the SaaS applications themselves are doing the securing and they don't have to worry about it. And that's just not the case. That's not the reality. So can you take us through a reality on the ground?
Oh, I assure you, we're going to get into that. One thing that you talked about your CISA event. Can you just recap? This is going to be topical. Who's going to be there? Like, who do you have speaking and talking, and where is your information coming from during this event?
So CISA, the Department of Homeland, DHS is coming. The department, and they are sending a team from the cybersecurity infrastructure security administration, right? So and they're sending a team that does the risk assessment and tabletop exercises. So two different
Awesome.
teams. And during the first part of the day, right, they're going to be there walking us through their risk assessment and how to use the CSET tool to that security assessment tool that they have, which is like really does an in-depth security assessment. Um, um, uh, and how to use it and how to you could actually sell it afterwards. They're going to give you the
Yeah.
tool, they're going to give you the template, they're going to give you all the things so that you can do that risk assessment. And then during the second part of the day, which is my favorite part, which brings me to the SaaS piece, is we're going to do how to conduct a tabletop exercise. And this is where you can really communicate to your client where the gaps are. Most of the clients don't understand where the attack vectors are, but if you actually sit down with your client, do a tabletop exercise and say, this is where you got breached, it's like, what do you mean that's where I got breached? this is this is what you need to protect that. Well, why don't we have that? Well, because you said you didn't need it. but this
You're
is
not
why
paying
you
for
need it, because this is where it's going to happen. So we actually have them coming out to do the training. CISA's coming out themselves with two teams to do the training. So it's going to be awesome.
That's awesome. All right. And see, the reason I did that to you, and I apologize, I know we haven't planned any of this,
Yeah.
is there's going to be a part in this presentation where I'm going to keep referencing a document. And I wanted to make sure it's clear in the beginning. I'm referencing the IC3.gov report for 2023, IC3 being the Internet Crimes Division of the Department of Homeland Security. So this is just like chef's kiss. It's a perfect introduction. And I know when I did this presentation the first time, you didn't know any of that, but wanted to make sure everybody
Yeah.
understood. The data
Yeah.
you're about to see is going to be pretty topical. So you know who I am. We can skip that. From the IC3, we have some information. This is also coming from Fortra. The links at the bottom are to the reports that I'm using. 62% of all reported cybercrime in 2023 was identity-based. Now, identity-based attacks work on infrastructure attacks. They're designed for SaaS applications, cloud, email, things like that. Which, let's be honest, if there's a single person watching this who doesn't have clients in M365 or Google Workspace, maybe this isn't for you. But for literally everybody else, that's the new threat vector. And that's not to say that there aren't still risks out there. It's just, it is so much easier to convince a person to do something that's against their best interest than it is to convince a computer to do something that it isn't designed for. So attackers figured that out pretty damn quickly, and they've just shifted to impersonation. It's not even malware. You can see the second one. Over 98% of all the threats that are hitting inboxes are just email impersonation. There's no payload. There's no ransomware attack. It's just tricking people into doing something they shouldn't have done. In 2023, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's so much easier to trick a person. We were doing an assessment with somebody like our client's client. We were walking through a scenario that happened, and this woman in an accounting office, the email went to spam, right? It got flagged and quarantined from her client. The email got flagged and quarantined, transfers $500,000 to this account. It's in the spam box saying, do not, with a big red warning. And she took it out, put it in her inbox, and sent the $500,000.
Yeah, it's the lowest common denominator is usually sitting in the chair. I'm not surprised. So listen, she's not alone. The IC3, and this does encompass the enterprise and the government, had 21,849 business email compromises reported in 2023, $2.9 billion in losses. And I want to make a comparison because it's important. They have a setting in there too for ransomware. In 2023, they had 34.3 million lost to ransomware in the report. 2.9 billion to business email compromise, 34.3 million to ransomware. Not that ransomware is not a threat. It's just most of the people that are going to be at this event have already done their due diligence and secured against ransomware. BCDR, I mentioned earlier, my background. Air-gapped backups, immutable backups, things like that. You get a ransomware, you fail back over. There's detection strategies for massive changes, file changes. We've done all of those things. So now the attacks pivot to the person in the chair. So that's what we're going to focus on. And I want to bring it closer to home for the managed service providers and smaller internal ITs and SMBs. Here's our numbers. This is from SAAS Alerts so far this year, and this goes back to August. So for 8 months, we have 1,113 MSPs that are currently using one of our modules called Respond. And Respond actually allows them to build out a rule set and say, if you see this behavior, take this action for us automatically.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, most of those guys do have a SOC or a SIM as well. They have an MDR in place. We see a lot of the other vendors there. But even with those in place, we have remediated 15,752 business email compromises so far this year. That's about 14 per MSP in 8 months. And the problem is it just happens so fast and it happens so frequently that even if you do have an MDR, the best thing they can do is throw a ticket over the fence at you to tell you something looks bad. We need to be a little bit more proactive. So what I want to do in the next few slides, I can't remember what's coming up next, is kind of talk through the mentality we should have about technology, cybersecurity, and this evolving landscape. And I've got some pop culture references in there. Joe, I hope you're up to speed because you're my only audience right now. They can only listen. So this is also from ic3.gov. I know it's tiny, but just an example of how many different attacks that have happened in 2024. Here's a bunch of the ones that they've reported on. This is from August. BEC attacks surged 20% annually thanks to AI tooling. You don't even have to be clever anymore. A computer will do it for you. Arctic Wolf says 70% of their customers have been targeted by business email compromise. Spiceworks, session token theft all the time. It's constantly coming up. The new threat of cybersecurity. Google coming out and saying, hey, this malware that's abusing our API, there's nothing wrong with our product. It's just a standard token theft thing. You guys keep giving people access. Proofpoint being used to send phishing emails. That happened, I guess at this point, it was maybe a few months ago. It happened at the beginning of the year. They just reported it last month. So the thing that's supposed to protect you being used to cause the issue. Microsoft coming out and saying, hey, look, at a higher level than others, people who use Azure workspaces are being targeted because they're spinning them up inside of Microsoft's data centers, doing low and slow rollout campaigns. And just because they're inside of Azure, it's bypassing some of the security aspects. What else we have? Why business email compromise scams target valuable B2B relationships from payments.com. This is like a constant thing. It's the challenge that we have. And this is my first pop culture reference, and this is showing our age. I'm going to start a quote, and I'm going to see if you remember the rest of it. It's not a whole lot to go off of, circa the early 90s. It's 10 p.m.
Do you know where your children are?
There it is. So it's the same thing now with our customers. We don't know where they are. We don't know what they're up to. It's 10 p.m. Why are they doing it?
It tells you a lot about our parents, you know? It's like, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Yeah, that I think it was Fox at the time had that thing that came on at 10. The TV had to remind you, hey, you've got kids around here somewhere. You should probably figure out they're up to.
Where are they now?
Yeah.
Oh,
So same thing though. That's what we're dealing with. It used to be they were all in an office and we could lock them behind an IP range and say, hey, this is the ASN that we're using. And if it's anything else, that's weird. Can't do that anymore. We've got very, very diverse workforces. They're distributed across the country. SAAS Alerts is a cybersecurity company. And keep in mind, we're like ISO 27001 and SOC 2, and we do everything we can. But we're scattered across this country. I'm in Florida. My CEO is up in New York. My best sales engineer is off in either Reno or somewhere else. He bounces back and forth. So it gets more and more difficult to figure out what is normal behavior, which, by the way, there you go. You got it right. Well done. That's the threat. So we need to have a better way of understanding what is anomalous behavior and what is expected behavior. And I'll give credit to the time that I was in the FAA and the time that I was in the Marine Corps. They had an approach that SAAS Alerts, and that I firmly believe is now the right approach. They didn't care so much about, where you were. They just cared that they could verify who you were and that you were touching things you were allowed to touch. So it's called UBA. You familiar with that term?
Mm-mm.
User behavior anomalies. That's what we need to focus on. So that's what we're going to get into. Token theft is the biggest one that is currently not being addressed. It is the most pervasive threat vector, and the vast majority of data for small to medium businesses reside in Google Workspace or in SharePoint. Dropbox, Box in cloud environments so that they're easily accessible, which is a value add, of course. We want them to be easily accessible, but with that comes some threats. I'm going to give you
Yeah.
another term that I love, and I thought this was a really clever way to look at cybersecurity and that fun high wire act that we have to do. Are you familiar with the term desire paths?
Design. Say that
Desire,
again.
desire paths. Are you familiar?
No, no, no. Tell me about that.
This is a cool concept. It's an urban planning thing. And I think that we need to start looking at cybersecurity for our distributed workforces in much the same way that I think it's the University of Technology for Illinois, maybe, they did this. They built their university and they didn't build any walkways. They just built the buildings and the big grass field. And they waited a full semester and they waited to see where people walked, see what they were going to do anyway. And then they built the sidewalks there. Those little
Wow.
ruts in the grass that you see where people cut around a corner, those are called desire paths. So in cybersecurity, the best thing that we can do to make sure that our people are behaving is to put the security guardrails around their normal behavior. Because if you try to force them to do things that they're not comfortable with, they're going to go around it. That's where we are. I love that analogy.
Awesome. Yeah.
Sure.
It's perfect, right? We do an ideation thing, and I didn't know that that's what it was called, but we show a desire path in a university where there's this long sidewalk that loops around like this, and there's a grass in between, and then there's a path, and everybody cuts right through, right? And so that's so correct. and that's that desire path is that I'm going to go this way. I know you want me to go that way, but I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go this way.
So I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So here's my next pop culture reference, and I'm going to use this to define a SIM, a SOC, and an MDR. And it's not a bad thing. They have their uses. But if you're familiar with the movie that this little screen grab is from, this is from Mel Brooks's classic now, because we're old, Robin Hood Men in Tights. And in this scene, Dave Chappelle's Achu, that's his character's name, is being attacked by the sheriff of Rottingham's guards. Robin Hood, played by Cary Elwes, jumps in and helps him out. And at one point, he says to Dave Chappelle, "Watch my back." So Dave Chappelle leans over and watches a guard just punch him in the back. And then he leans back over and says, "Hey, your back just got punched twice." That's what a SIM will do. That's what an MDR will do in the cloud. It's going to be like, "Hey, something bad just happened to you. We didn't do anything, but at least you know what happened."
But now you know what happened.
Yeah, knowledge is power. It's good to know that you were breached, but that doesn't really stop the breach. It doesn't stop data egress. By law, in some verticals, you have to report that breach. It can be damaging, not just financially, but like to your image, to your customer's image. It can be a detriment. So knowing it happened is good, but stopping it would be better. So typically at this point, if I had a whole audience in front of me that could talk, I would ask them what they use to protect against token theft. And the most typical answers are, I have a ZTNA solution, Zero Trust Network Access solution, which is cool, conditional access policies, or I have what used to be called the ATP, Advanced Threat Protocols, in Microsoft turned all the way up as high as my customers will tolerate. So we're going to talk about those next. Now, this little diagram, I put the green bar around it. Other than that, this is straight off of a Microsoft KB that I'm going to share. I'm going to tab out of this and into that right now. But before I do that.
And then when you do that, we'll put it in the show notes also so people can go look at it. So Perfect. We'll make sure that it's in the show notes and gets captured. Go ahead.
Let's pop over there right now. So this is the article, and I'll get you the URL so you can put this in there. This is Microsoft describing what token tactics are, how people are using them. It's a 9-minute read. I thoroughly encourage everybody to read it. We're going to gloss over some stuff here. I'm going to scroll down. This is explaining what token theft is. For those of you who don't know, the most pervasive one right now, Evil Gen X 2 is one that people have heard of, is an adversary in the middle attack. And the way it really works is these people do not care about your login. They don't care about your password. They don't care about your MFA method. When Microsoft confirms that a person is allowed to be there, what they do is they ask for 4 things if you're using conditional access policies. Do you know the login? Do you know the password? Can you get through the MFA check? And once you do, it'll check conditional access policies to say, okay, are you where you're allowed to be on a device that you're allowed to be on, et cetera, et cetera. Once it confirms that information, it issues a token. That token is the reason that when you're in Microsoft or Google, you don't have to re-authenticate every time you go from your calendar to your mailbox to SharePoint to Teams, because you have a token. So Evil Gen X and all the other token theft attacks operate by putting something in the middle. So that lady that you referenced, she falls for something, she clicks on a link and it says, hey, re-authenticate. That passes through the adversary in the middle infrastructure. They send it to Microsoft. Microsoft says, okay, you got the password right. Confirm your MFA. They get a legitimate MFA prompt on their phone or however they go about it, and they enter that in. They pass that on to Microsoft. Microsoft says, okay, let's see where you are. The thing is, the person that's falling for it is exactly where they're supposed to be on a device that they're allowed to be on, so conditional access passes. Microsoft says, okay, good, and it sends a token back to that person. That adversary in the middle infrastructure grabs that token, replays it in another browser, having bypassed all of the security, and now they're in right next to you. It sucks because we can't get rid of tokens. We need them or nobody would use my platform.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be impossible. You'd have to log in every single time.
Every time you click on something from every individual device. And if you signed in from your phone and your laptop and then you walked out of your house on your laptop, it would make you re-authenticate every time because you switched from Wi-Fi to a cell network. Yeah. So Microsoft does have this other thing called continuous access evaluation. If you can get your customers to bite on it, you should absolutely use it. It's a pain point though, because it really does cause a lot of false positives and it restricts their behavior quite a lot. But if you can get them to do it, do it. Now, the reason we're on this page is Microsoft's going to go a little further and explain to you what you need to do to secure your customers. And I put this in the presentation so you don't have to read. But one of the things that I want to point out that I think is kind of funny and typical Microsoft is throughout this entire thing, about 4 or 5 times, you're going to see a comment that they make about their own processes. You're going to see where they say, we recognize that while it may be recommended for organizations to enforce this, it may not always be practical.
Yes.
They tell you flatly throughout the things that they're asking you to do aren't necessarily practical, but it's the best option that they've got to help you protect against this stuff. Kind of sucks. Like, hey, this is going to make your life difficult, but you have to do it. The detect part here, this is DART. Well, it used to be called TART, Microsoft's Detection and Response Team. I'm going to pop back into my presentation here because I summarized this a little bit better in there. But they suggest you, A, reduce the lifetime of your session tokens. It's a good idea anyway, to the lowest that your customers will tolerate. Will it stop a token theft? No, but it will minimize the amount of time somebody can be in there because it's going to force them to re-authenticate and they can't. It says you should implement phishing-resistant MFA solutions. SAAS Alerts uses YubiKeys. If I forget my YubiKey when I'm on the road, I can't get into my stuff. It's kind of infuriating. But again, will it stop a token theft? No. But will it make somebody second guess if they really should be re-authenticating on occasion? Yes. And then follow the Microsoft's DART recommendations for detection. They want you to focus on things like email forwarding rules, inbox rules, stuff like that, data egress. They want you to focus on security and compliance changes if somebody disables or tries to enable MFA. They want you to look at a bunch of things. The biggest pain point for an MSP specifically is that our average MSP has somewhere between 7 and 13 employees. They are supporting somewhere in the range of 700 to about 2,500 end users. Those average MSPs field about 15,000 logged events a week. So if you're going to sit there and try to dig through audit logs in Microsoft across multiple tenants looking for this behavior so you can stop it ahead of time, I wish you the absolute best of luck. Now, to your earlier point, you would think Microsoft is aware of this and they're doing something to help us out. Here's Microsoft's terms of use. I don't know how often you read this. I tend to check it every time I see that they pushed an update. About 2 years ago, they pushed an update. And the update, if you scroll about 2.5 feet down the page, was to this section right here.
I love the way you do that. 2.5 feet down.
You're not exactly trying to make it clear. This sentence right here has always been there. Microsoft will not be liable for any loss that you may incur as a result of someone else using your password or account, either with or without your knowledge. This next sentence is new as of 2 years ago. However, you could be held liable for losses incurred by Microsoft or another party due to someone else using your account or password.
Ooh.
So, yes, they are intimately aware that token theft is an issue and has been for about the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And they did pretty much what you would expect of Microsoft. They covered themselves with legalese.
Yeah.
It's not our fault if you get breached, but if it causes monetary damage to another company or us, we can come after you for that damage.
Yeah.
They are not on your side. The even scarier part to me is if you go and buy Defender or you go to up your license to like an E3 or buy a P2 license, at the bottom, it's going to link you to the terms of use for those things.
And this
That's it.
line's going to be in there.
Yep. Now, there's a longer version of this thing that's even more alarming because they do say in a business scenario with business premium and above, if there is a breach on their side, something that they could have protected, you can arbitrate with Microsoft for up to $5 per incident.
Wow.
Yeah. So Reddit is a lot of fun if you're a vendor in the managed services space. Typically, it's where people go to trash vendors and complain about what we do. We're very fortunate at SAAS Alerts. We are by and large very loved. But one of my favorite quotes off of a Reddit post was somebody who said, "Why do I need a third party for this? Why can't I just use Microsoft's tools to secure it?" And the comment was, paying Microsoft to protect Microsoft is like paying drug dealers to keep crime down.
Yeah.
It's just not in their best interest. They don't care. So it's interesting and it's fun and I love it. Now,
And unfortunately, it's true.
yeah, you just got to remember whose side they're on. And by the way, as an MSP, we're all out there to make money. That's the goal. Like you don't open a business. If you didn't want to, you would have opened a nonprofit. You didn't. So the thing that Microsoft is really good at is squeezing every possible dollar they can out of their licensing and leaving very little for an MSP. But security, specifically around cloud applications, is a very good way to demonstrate the value of your service provider and actually get something out of securing, managing, and reselling Microsoft licenses.
Yeah.
So we're in a good spot. Let me go back into this thing and I'm going to show you a couple of fun examples. Any comments before I do?
Well, I just, it doesn't matter what we're very clear here that how you make money as an MSP is you narrow your focus to a single vertical. And when we say a single vertical, we don't mean lawyers. We mean personal injury attorneys or intellectual property attorneys or gastroenterologists or, or dermatologists, right? And what I love about this is that all those folks need this. All those folks need to, like, everybody needs to have that, but the implementation of it is going to vary wildly depending on who your ideal client profile is and what it is that and what it is that you're providing for them. So as you go into these next slides, it's really, especially for the MSPs that are going to view this, that are our folks that, everybody's like so narrow and targeted and focused, start thinking about how do you apply this to your ideal client profile, and how does this solution help you improve your value proposition? Because at the end of the day, if your value proposition is wildly different from everybody else's, you're competing with nobody but yourself. And that's really what we're all about here, is helping you get to that place where, there is no other option. You're it. And there's enough market out there for you to create that for yourself.
Absolutely.
All right.
And here's something, again, speaking of being in the right place, if you guys, I imagine you all are, you're on LinkedIn. If you guys watch social media or the news, you know that we are not that far off from some aspects of this being mandated, legally mandated. It's true in some places already.
Yeah.
So what you want to remind your customers of right now is you're going to have to do this, but once it's legally mandated, I'm going to charge you way more because you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I'm saying that as a vendor. When you guys don't have a choice but to do what we offer, we become a lot more valuable. So the best time to have secured your SaaS applications was when you first got into them. The second best time to do it is right now. Do it before you're forced to do it, because man, things cost a lot more and you're going to wait a lot longer when every other business is scrambling to get this done. Let's be preemptive and let's get you a better price and get this configured before you need it so you're not behind the gun.
100%. All right, let's get into the home stretch.
So I modified this slide deck, so I don't know what's coming up next. We're all going to be surprised. Oh,
Yay.
okay. I know what this is. All right. So this is a good example of what's changed in the past 18 months. And I've obfuscated some information. This is from my buddy Scott. He called me back a few months ago and he's like, I am really confused. And this is from inside of SAAS Alerts, forgive me, but he's like, I am really confused. SAAS Alerts keeps kicking out my clients. And I went and I unlocked her account and it kicked her back out. And I don't know why. And I said, well, it's smarter than we are. So there's got to be a reason. So we did a screen share and we hopped in and he said, I'm not seeing the issue. She lives in Georgia. She's signing in. This is stuff I've seen her do before. And the one thing that stood out to me was this happened a few times and there's a funny story at the back end. There's this thing in here you see called a WCSS client authentication. What that is exactly what we talked about. It's when you bounce from Teams to SharePoint, SharePoint to your calendar. And we noticed, and this is a little bit into it, that first of all, she created an email event and she named the email event ... Now, the reason they do that is because when you're looking at an audit log, they're truncated and you'll see ... at the end of things where you can click in and get more info. So you're like, oh, she created an email event, email rule, no big deal. There is no justification to name an email rule ... unless you're doing exactly what I just described. So she did that. And then I was like, okay, well, okay, I get it. You're saying she's in Georgia. This is how smart these guys are getting now. They stole her token and then they VPN'd in to somewhere near where the domain is registered before they replayed it.
Nice.
So conditional access policies obviously failed you already. Any third-party tool that you have, anything that geo-fences that isn't Microsoft's would have failed you right there because this ASN is Georgia. It's in Atlanta, just like she is. And it's not that hard to do a who is and figure out where a domain is registered and VPN in there before you replay a token. So SAAS Alerts goes a step further, and this is something, whether you use us or not, something you have to be aware of, is they figure out third-party tools that are in use and they work to find ways around it. So one of the things that we've focused heavily on is being future-proof. The way that SAAS Alerts is designed is you can modify the triggers for the rules. So we noticed a few months ago, there's a new app called Perfect Data. Perfect Data can be OAuth into by pretty much anybody with a Microsoft account. And what it does is it replicates the entire contents of everything they have access to another cloud provider. So even once you catch them, kick them out, they have all of the data and they can use that to educate their next attack. They can come to you and be like, yeah, you got me out of there, but I have these 37 SharePoint files that I'm pretty sure you don't want out there.
Yeah.
They still get you, even if you catch them. So a lot of our partners have built a respond rule in SAAS Alerts that quite literally says, if anybody authenticates into Perfect Data, sever all the OAuth connections.
Yeah.
So as soon as we see it, we kick them out before it has time to replicate the data.
Beautiful.
We weren't built. SAAS Alerts wasn't built to do that, but we were built to leave the door open for another attack vector to develop and for us to respond to it. Whatever you guys choose to do, you need to be prepared to constantly update against the next threat vector. So don't lock yourself in a tool where you're locked behind a development cycle. If some MDR promises you that they're going to manage your SaaS applications and their development sprints take 3 months, the closest you're going to get to a good response to a threat is 3 months. So you're blind until then. We need to crowdsource protection the way attackers crowdsource their efforts.
It's the same deal that you talked about with the desired path, right? What you did is you built the buildings. Yep. The MSP, they get to walk through the desired paths. It's the same situation here. So that really
customize it, make it fit your client. The one size fits all solution doesn't work in a cloud environment. We have partners that say, hey, like this customer of mine doesn't know how to spell VPN. They'll never use one. Okay, build a rule that says if we detect VPN activity, we know it's not them. This customer is on a ZTNA solution. They exclusively come in from this IP range. Build a rule that says if they try to come in from outside of that IP range, we retire the session. This customer uses Windows machines exclusively. If we see a Linux OS with a Safari browser, kick them out. You can specify the things that will protect your customers the best. Whatever you choose to do, whether you choose to do it manually, build your own internal NOC, however you want to handle it, be prepared to pivot because the people coming after you, they damn sure are going to pivot quickly when they realize something didn't work.
Yeah. Awesome.
This is an example of that. It's tiny text. I'll walk you through it. These are 3 of the rules that our partners built that basically map devices to users and said, hey, if it's outside of this normal behavior, here's the action you take on my behalf. Be prepared to do that. It's really cool. I am going to put up, while we continue our chat, if you have questions, it doesn't have to be to buy the product. If you have questions about anything in this slide deck or you need clarification, I'm Ryan at SAASalerts.com. If you are interested in seeing how we can help and take this off your plate, that's info at SAASalerts.com. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help and here to educate.
And that's really it. I wanted you to give them a place where they could get in touch with you, and we'll put this in the show notes as well, so we can stop sharing. That way, we can chat a little bit, and then we'll wrap up this session, right? But
Save me time for more pop culture reference.
all right, I'm ready. I'm ready for it. Right?
Have you ever seen the movie Moneyball?
Yeah.
All right. So
What was
there's a
that?
scene at the very end. Say again? Okay.
Yeah. The movie. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a scene at the very end where Billy Bean is talking to, I think it's the owner of the Red Sox, if I remember correctly. And the owner says, the first one through the wall always gets bloody. In this environment, teaching your end users that this is important, you're kind of going to be the first one through the wall. So you need to know and be confident in your explanation that this is right. Billy Bean suffered for 3 months with this idea that you could play and you could pick just they get on base as the answer to who you put on your baseball team. And it was tough. It was tough going, but he was right. So you guys need to be educated, need to understand the threat vector, and you need to speak confidently that you're the answer to it, because you're teaching these people something they've never heard before. And in technology, to our detriment, we tend to have this mentality of, if I buy this new product, what am I replacing with this new product? You're not. There is a new threat vector and you need a new solution to it. It's going to be a challenge, but it's going to make your customers more secure. It'll allow you to monetize the most painful thing right now, which is SaaS applications. And you're going to be unique to the other people that are pitching things to them, because you're the first one's going to show you have a definitive answer for the future for these threat vectors.
And that's really it, right? Is how do you continue to differentiate yourself? For us, it's all about you always start with who's the ideal prospect that you work with, and what's the problem you solve for them. And then as you go down, you're gonna there's their line of business application. You have to help them with that. You need to be able to help them with that if you're going to differentiate yourself. That's the difference between getting $200-$300 a seat and getting $500 or $1,000 or $1,500 a seat. We have an MSP that gets $1,500 a seat, right? But he does that because he does FINRA compliance, and he has all this complexity in the environments that he works in, that he can charge that much. You want to be able to get that price up. You want to be able to differentiate yourself in the market. You need to start at the top by what's the problem you're solving for whom. And then you have to narrow down to all these little areas, all these little nooks and crannies, right? And say, look, this is where you're not protected here. This is where your business is at risk there. This is where, and then bring in those tools to be able to solve those problems.
Yeah, end of the day, what you should really be offering is an end-all, be-all peace of mind that I don't have to question that you've got my best interest covered. Now, I do got to say, because I've had this conversation a few times, the numbers that you just threw out, when people are listening to this, typically what I hear is, yeah, that might work for some people, but there's no way I could do that in my vertical or where I live, or this is a low cost of living area. You're right. If you have that mentality and you think you can't, then you 100% can't. But that's why you're not differentiating yourself.
Yeah. Ford had it right. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
You're right. There's another one. This one's actually attributed to Ford, but apparently he may have never said it. It's still very accurate. So if I would have asked the people what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses.
Yeah.
Now, allegedly, he may not have ever said that, but the sentiment is right. Your customers, much like technicians in general, they're working in their own mindset. This is how I would get there. And they're only thinking inside of what they understand. So if you ask somebody, and I do this during hiring, how would you solve this problem? You'll learn a lot about their background, because they will lean on what they know and come up with the most convoluted concept of a rat trap to solve a problem without ever thinking that maybe I don't know enough to answer this question.
Yeah.
So it's very good to tell people like, hey, yes, you can solve this SaaS application pain by hiring a SOC and by locking your customers in this little location and forcing them to only use the device that you provide. Or if you're open to new ideas, let's do what the federal government has been doing for forever and just focus on user behavior anomalies. Let them operate the way they want to operate day in and day out, and just we'll build the guardrails around your normal behavior.
Because they're going to anyway, whether you want them to or not.
Exactly. And it's really hard to
Awesome.
protect somebody who's lying to you about what they're doing because they know they're not supposed to do it. Anybody who has kids, the most exhausting thing is when you're like, why would you do that? And they're like, I didn't. Dude, I know you did it. Like,
But why would
so
you do it?
yeah,
My
why?
son is suffering. He's suffering the impact of that. He lost access to his computer for this whole week because we caught him in a lie. I said, look, you lost it for a week this time. Next time you lie, it'll be 2 weeks. The time after that, it'll be
Yeah,
4 weeks. The time after that, it'll be 8 weeks. What'd you learn about lying? Don't do it. Okay, good. Let's
look,
make
it's
sure
a
we get
teachable
clear
moment.
about
My
it.
son
You're
has
11
just turned.
now.
It's a teachable moment. My son has just turned 13. He wants all the social media things that some other kids have. From because of my background, TikTok's a solid no. You can't have it.
Yeah,
I don't
oh,
think he's
no.
old enough to be on Instagram because I can't police it. And he thinks sometimes that he's smarter than me. So he went online and made an Instagram account, but didn't download the app because he thought I wouldn't notice that. And my router immediately threw an alert at me, being like, "Hey, somebody just spent 17 minutes on Instagram." I was like, "You little shit!" Like, but your customers are the same way. If you tell them they're not allowed to use something, they're going to try to find a way to do it anyway if they feel like they need it. So why not just say, dude, fine. Like I can't do it with my kid. It's a little different, but fine. If you're going to use
Yeah.
it, I'm going to put this monitoring tool in place so that if anything bad happens, I can at least pick up on it.
Awesome. So I know we're going to be doing a bunch of other stuff together. Are you going to be at the thing at the Bronx Zoo
I
that's
guess
coming up
not.
on the 25th?
I'm in Fort Myers, Florida. I have no intention of being in the Bronx.
Okay. All right. So then so I won't see you there, but I'll see you at whatever next event I see you. And
Yeah.
we got
Let's
some
make
other
sure
stuff coming up together. So I'm really excited about that. With that said, folks, sadly, we come to the end. Before we go, it is important that all of you remember that you are loved. Okay? We do love you. We thank you for being in our lives. And listen to what Ryan said because you've got to protect your clients that way. All right. Bye bye, y'all.
Good talking to you again.
It's great seeing you.